Hello and welcome to another video. I hope that you are all very well. Today I'd like to talk about the steering for the purpose of the UK driving test. Are you allowed to cross hands on the steering wheel? What about dry steering? However, before I can answer any of these questions, I just wanted to say a big thank you to all our current subscribers, because without you guys, this video today would not be possible. If you're watching this channel and you're not a subscriber, then please hit that subscribe button. So one, you do not miss out on our future videos, and two, you're supporting the videos, you're supporting the channel so that we can make more videos for you. So let's talk about the steering. The DVSA recommends the push and pull method of steering. In its simplest form, that basically means that one hand does the pushing and then the other hand does the pulling. So the right hand stays on the right hand side of the steering wheel and the left hand stays on the left hand side of the steering wheel. Now, if you're an experienced driver, let's say you've been driving for the last 4 or 5 years in a different country, for example, the United States, and you've come here to England and you want to take a driving test, you will find the push and pull method of steering quite challenging to get used to. Not because it's difficult, because in order for you to learn something that you already know in a different way, you need to unlearn what you know before you can start learning what you know. So you've actually got to do twice as much work. However, the good news is that although the push and pull is the recommended DVSA method, it's not the only method. We're going to go for a very short drive and I'm going to show you what is acceptable in the UK driving test and what is not acceptable. So at the end of this road, I'm going to be turning left. As I said, the DVSA recommends the push and pull method, and that is the method I'm going to be using on this particular turning. So my right hand remains on the right hand side and my left hand remains on the left hand side of the steering wheel. Quite simple. Now I'm going to be turning left into the next road, but this time I will not be pushing and pulling, and I'm going to cross my hands. So the answer is yes, you can cross hands in the driving test. So if I do this, that is perfectly acceptable as far as the driving test is concerned. As a matter of fact, you can use any method of steering. You can even combine methods of steering. I'm just going to turn right here. And on this particular occasion, I'm only going to be steering with one hand. And then I've got my hand back on the steering wheel. Even that is acceptable. As I said, the most important thing is that I have control of the vehicle. Some learner drivers, they push and pull the steering wheel, but then they let the wheel slide back. They let the wheel slip through their hands. That is one thing that driving examiners do not like. So I'm just going to demonstrate that to you. So I've done the pushing and pulling, and then what they do is they slide the wheel back like that. And the reason the examiners don't like that is sometimes the wheel slips too much and it can go on the other side. So if you are going to push and pull, then you need to make sure that you push and pull both ways. So I'm going to be turning left at the end of this road, and here I'm going to push and pull, remembering to push and pull back as well. So the push and pull method, right hand on the right hand side of the steering wheel and the left hand on the left hand side of the steering wheel. You may be surprised that the steering comes in the top 10 reasons of why learner drivers fail their driving test. And one of the reasons for it is the show me, tell me questions. During the driving test, whilst you are driving, the examiner will ask you a question. They may say, when it's safe to do so, show me how you would on the rear demister. Now, if I'm in the middle of this roundabout and I take my eyes off the road and I try to find the rear demister, then there's a good possibility that my steering wheel is going to swerve. My car's going to swerve and I'm going to go wrong. And the examiner will probably grab hold of my steering wheel to make sure that I don't hit anything. So when the driving examiner says during the driving test, for the purpose of the show me questions, when the driving examiner says, when it's safe to do so, show me whatever, then make sure that it is safe. If you are in the middle of a bend, or middle of a roundabout, or dealing with any other hazard, finish that hazard first before showing the examiner where the rear demister is. If you do not know where the rear demister or where anything else is that the examiner has asked you for, then it doesn't matter, because sometimes you could be driving the car for the very first time, and if the examiner does say to you, can you on the rear demister, and you do not know, simply tell the examiner, I'm sorry, I don't know where the rear demister is. I've not driven this vehicle before. It's the first time. You will not fail your driving test for not answering the show me, tell me question correctly. The examiner will not and cannot fail you for that. They can only give you a minor fault. You are allowed 15 minor faults and still pass the UK driving test. Okay, let's now move on to reversing. When you're reversing for the purposes of the driving test, it's quite difficult to have both hands on the steering wheel and to be looking through the back window, because for the purpose of the driving test, the examiners do expect you to make the majority of the observations through the back window, not in the rear view mirror like in some countries. So you can turn the steering with one hand, and the other hand you can rest on your laps, rest it on the back of the driving seat or anywhere else as long as you don't touch the driving examiner. So here I am, I'm just going to do a bit of reversing, and I've got one hand behind the seat and the other hand on the steering wheel, and I'm going back and I'm going to start turning, and this type of turning is perfectly acceptable in the UK driving test. Straighten up the wheel there. So you are allowed to do that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is dry steering. Dry steering is when you steer the wheel while the car is stationary, like so. So the car's not moving and I've turned the wheel towards my left, and as I move, the car will just go in, and now my car's straighten up the wheel and go forward. This is something that the DVSA does not recommend. However, just because they don't recommend it, it doesn't mean that they're going to fail you for it. The DVSA does not recommend dry steering because it causes uneven wear on the tires. So as you're dry steering, you're rubbing the tires against the tarmac and it causes uneven wear. However, you need to balance things out. For example, if you're doing a parallel park and your car's parked nicely, it's just that the wheels are sticking out, it is far better to dry steer the wheel, turn the wheel without turning the car, without moving the car, than to risk hitting the curb. Because if you hit the curb in the driving test, then you can easily fail for that. But if you dry steer in the driving test, you will not fail the driving test. Another point that I need to mention is that when you go for the driving test, you are trying to prove to the driving examiner that you are no longer a learner driver, that you are a safe, competent driver and you deserve that driving license. However, if you're an experienced driver, then why would you drive like a learner driver? Why would you want to pretend that you're a learner? Do not go out of your way and change your whole driving style, your whole driving habits, just for the purposes of the driving test, because that way you make it twice as hard to pass the driving test. As far as the steering wheel is concerned, as long as you have full control of the vehicle, you will not get any mistakes on the steering wheel. I hope that I've answered your questions with reference to the steering wheel. If I have, please, two things. Firstly, give the video a thumbs up, and secondly, do share it with at least one person. Thank you for your time. Take care. Bye bye.